Hey everyone, let's talk about The Familiar One by Danielewski. Now this is a big book and I bought it not knowing anything about it. The only thing I knew was that it looked really amazing. I liked The House of Leaves, also by the same author, and that there's also a Familiar 2 coming out in October, but that was it. And I loved going into it blindly. Now, when I started it like a day or so, I watched someone's Friday Reads and they mentioned there were 9 books in the series apparently, and also in one sentence what it is about. And I don't want to do that because for me, even that one sentence turned out to be a spoiler. I can't really explain it because if I tell you what that sentence is, I will spoil you the same way. But it sort of took away the adventure and shifted my attention towards certain things that I didn't have before and I wouldn't have had if I hadn't known this. So I don't really want to tell you what this book is about, but I want to tell you more about the reading experience, how it is written, and all the things that went through my head during reading it. So if you don't want to hear anything of that and just go into the book blindly, I highly recommend that. Do that. It's like a mystery where you have to solve puzzles and trying to understand what the author tells you. If you want to hear what I thought and want to know more about the writing because you don't like that much mystery and going blindly into a book, stick around. But I will not tell you things about the story. When opening the book, you first come across the production, and it's kind of weird because I didn't feel like it was story because it was too random to have really one conceptual story. But it felt important and not important at the same time. So as I got along, it felt more like trailers before a movie, like something you watch before something else started. So I took it as that. And I'm not really sure if there is a connection coming on later. There is a hint, but I'm not really sure. The whole book itself feels like reading an episode movie. You know, something like Magnolia or 1114, something like that, where you have multiple narrators or perspectives and storylines that connect at the end. So far, when we look at the book from the side, we have a color code. This color code is always a different narrator. Every time a new narrator starts, we have the time and place in the top corner, and it also ends with the time and place. And each narrator is really 1 second connected to the next narrator. I really like that feat. Even when it's in different time zones, you can notice that it's still only one day because the book's subtitle is One Rainy Day in May. So all these stories are connected mainly by rain. It rains everywhere. And that's really interesting. Then when we come to the narrators, every narrator has a different font size and every narrator has a different way of narration. And at the beginning that confused me a lot, but I soon noticed that the narration and the font, probably, I'm not really sure about the font yet, but the narration, the way they talk, represents how they think and how they talk in real life and represents their character. So we have one character who really asks a lot of questions, and you can see that the font and the writing and how it is done really represents how she can never stop asking questions. She always calls it her question song, and I love that. And reading this, you can see how her brain pops out questions while she's trying to make a sentence. With another character, I really thought that the way we think is represented very well in her narration, because you start off not nicely with a good sentence, but you put in little extra things and you think on different levels when you talk. You say something, but in the back of your head you think another thing and another thing. And that's represented in the way this narrator speaks. With another narrator, we have gang backgrounds, and it was really tough to get into his narration. For me, I really struggled with the first time he was around, but the second and third time we met him, I could understand his way of talking a lot better. And it represented very much the machoism of being part of a gang and not really sure yet what his role is. And the narrator that I had the most problems with is the one in Singapore, because he speaks Singlish. That is a mixture of English and Chinese, and I don't know any Chinese, so I could not really understand all of it. Let's stick to fonts and narrators a little bit longer before we go into detail of like the Zinglish and the difficulty of understanding the narrators. Because after 563 pages, we get a break and we get someone else talking into it, and it's explaining the narrative structure. So until that point, I was on my own. And then there's a break and this narrative help comes along telling you how everything works a little bit. But I'm not really sure if I like that or not. I can recommend, if you're really confused, to just skip there and read that part first if you really don't know what's going on. And that brings me back to the Zinglish, because not all of the book is in English. There are some parts where you have broken English, you have the Chinese-English mixture, but you also have Russian parts, you have Chinese signs, you have Arabic writing, and it's not always translated. You're not always sure what they say, and even if the translation you get is the whole thing. And the translation doesn't always come from the same place. So it's rather interesting. And I personally did not look up anything. I'm pretty sure by now you can find online what everything says. But for me, I found it very interesting to have this not knowledge, like not knowing what exactly they're saying, what is going on, because it left me feeling confused. And for some reason, I like that I don't know everything. You know, when you read a book, you usually expect to know everything and to get told everything, or in a way that you can understand everything. But the language barrier already is here, and I cannot break through it easily on my own. So I would have to go and research it and find it out. And I'm not really sure if I want to. So I'm not decided on that one yet. I haven't researched anything about the book. It's all what I experienced and what I thought. And so far, I like that I don't know everything. I also have to give you a warning. This is just the beginning. The story does not end. It's merely beginning at the end of the day. And I really want to know what's going to happen next. Despite this book being such a big monster, it's almost 900 pages. It was a very fast read. Apart from the very difficult narrative structures, there are also narrative structures that are very easy. And also, like he did in The House of Leaves, you can see how the format and the layout of the page drives you forward. Sometimes there's just one word and you're like turning pages and you're like, oh my God, and suspense is rising. And it's amazing how he does that. Alone for that, I recommend reading this book, but also for the mystery and for the greatness that I'm sure will come out of it at the end. And all the things, it made me think so many things, I just can't describe it. And I'm not really sure if this is either a horrible review and talk about the book, or if it's good. I really don't know, but I love reading this. And if you have read it, let's talk about it. Warn about spoilers if you're giving spoilers. Let's embark on this adventure together, guys. Thank you all for watching and tell me what you thought. Bye-bye.